is Monday nights. It is time for the Bucks on the Pond podcast. We're back talking East Carolina baseball. I'm Stephen Igo, joined by Scott Lorbatcher, fresh off his Vegas/Mountains trip. The guy just gets around. His Reds are also being no-hit, so we'll update you there. Jonathan Wagner is also with us. He's wearing his national shirt. He lost a heartbreaker in NCAA football in our Hoist the Colors dynasty. So, in addition to ECU baseball struggling, they are also coming off some tough circumstances with their other sporting ventures. Gentlemen, we've got a lot to catch up on. Unfortunately, not too many ECU wins to talk about. Pirates go 2-2 over the last week. They win the midweek win at Elon, or get the midweek win at Elon. Lose 2 out of 3 to Wichita State in Kansas. It is Cinco de Mayo, by the way, so happy Cinco de Mayo to everybody who is partaking, celebrating, including myself, a couple of margaritas deep. But excited about today's show. And first off, we'll ask Scott Lorbatcher, how was Vegas? How does it feel to be back?
Apparently my computer is still catching up from not having been used. So we'll see how that goes.
Your computer also took a vacation.
Yeah, it was like I've been asleep for a solid week. Vegas was awesome. It was a good time. Got to meet some of my video game friends in real life for the first time, which was a cool experience. Played some golf. I am going to lose my mind on my computer right now.
As long as we can hear you, we're good.
Yeah, for sure. And it could be the Reds being no-hit on my left, also dragging down my internet. But Vegas was great. It was cool to see. Don't know that it's something that I would do, every year or anything like that. But it was a cool experience. Also got to kayak up the Colorado River. Very cold and clear water there, so that was pretty cool.
Well, it's good to have you back, and it is ridiculous that these places charge like $1 million a month for internet now, but it's like if you stream 2 things at one time, you can't function. It's pretty annoying. I have the Celtics-Knicks game going on in the background as well, waiting for Nuggets Thunder. Did the Reds have a hit?
I could turn the game off. We're not getting no hit tonight. I'm turning it off right now. That's all I need to see. We're
Who
good
got
to
it
go.
done?
Just a single back up the middle.
By who?
I don't even know. Just saw the ball go. Saw the ball go past second base on the ground. That's all we needed to see.
Jonathan Wagner, we'll let you speak now after waiting patiently. Wags, how's it going?
It's going well. I didn't get to watch a whole lot of baseball this weekend, but maybe that was a good thing for ECU's sake. And I also got to scoreboard watch my Nats beat Scott's Reds in the series. So that was nice. Rough time to be a Reds fan, I guess. I had to bring that up and wear the Nats shirt just for that. But, I had a fun weekend. I was at a wedding and with a friend of the podcast, Philip Pokington. And we had a good time. And it was fun, nice to get away for a little bit. And I have just to continue the trend, I have the Maple Leafs Panthers game to my left, which is currently at intermission. And I'm prepared to turn it off if it starts making me lag, because I don't really care.
There you go, guys. It is a fun time of year. Man, not that we could probably just talk other sports for the next hour and people maybe wouldn't mind, but we'll get into ECU baseball. But like NHL playoffs are just incredible. Like I'm not even a hockey guy, but man, Game 7s, the 2 Game 7s over the weekend were just insanity. And it's just, you got the playoffs going on, the NBA, college baseball is winding down. Unfortunately, ECU is not in the at-large picture, but still a lot to follow and a lot to talk about here. So let's get into it. We won't delay any further. Pirates lose. When's the last time, guys, before we get into overall thoughts, when's the last time ECU lost a series this bad? Like in terms of to a bad opponent? Like Wichita State is
Bryant.
Pretty terrible. I guess Bryant would be it. Were they any decent that year?
No, they weren't very good. I think they got swept the next weekend by William and Mary or High Point or somebody of that caliber.
Yeah. So beginning of 22. It's just been a frustrating year, man. And for those, I know some people have checked out and they're not watching all the games. I watch the vast majority of all 3 games. And it's just ECU easily could have swept the series, man. It's just those little mistakes that just drive you freaking crazy that add up. And when ECU makes one of those mistakes right now, like not covering first base, instead of it being a 1-run game, turns into a 5-0 game, not making simple plays, walking guys, those plays are making ECU lose right now because the margin for error is so thin. So that's just kind of my big takeaway is the Pirates just continue to not only not have the talent we usually see, but they're making more mistakes than we usually see. So Wags, your thoughts overall on the weekend and the week that was?
Yeah, it's just frustrating for the reasons you said. I mean, obviously this team is what it is. This team isn't very good, and injuries have played a factor in what's happened this year, but it's not the only factor. And to me, I think the reason this season is so frustrating is because I think this team, as currently constructed, including injuries, is capable of being so much better than it has been. Like you said, it's the errors, the two drop fly balls in the late innings yesterday, and you lose because of it. And even on Saturday, you make things tough on yourself. And Elon sucks. And twice this year, you have struggled to beat them, and you're bringing in your top guys to do it. And that's the frustrating thing. It's just we're heading into the final 2 weeks of the regular season, and there's still a path to where ECU finishes in last. And there are teams like Rice and Wichita and Memphis in this conference that are so much worse. So it is what it is, but it's frustrating, and I fear it's only going to get more frustrating. But yeah, I'll save the positive part for what I learned later. But yeah, it's just overall, it's just a sense of frustration, and it doesn't have to be this bad because I don't think this team is as bad as they're playing like.
Hey, the Elon Phoenix had a 4-1 week, Wags. I need you to apologize to Elon because they swept.
I will never apologize to Elon, but on that note, I will say robots, bots, AI,
right.
Elon again, Tesla,
the
all
other
that good
Elon
stuff. Yeah.
They swept Hofstra on the road, including an 18-17 win on Saturday. So that was a barn burner. Wags, I told you I'm a few deep. Scott, your thoughts on the week?
Your internet slows down, and all of a sudden you're Wags. But no, it's just more of the same. It's hard to come and say the same things every week. It's just when it's not. This weekend wasn't a talent issue. There's been weeks where that's been the case, but this week was a execution issue, and that's not been the case of East Carolina teams in the past. And I think that's what makes it difficult to watch is we're not used to guys not covering bases, dropping balls in the outfield. And this year, man, it's been a ton of that, of outfield errors. And you can look around, in the majors and in pretty much any level of baseball, and outfielders don't make errors. You may have one every so often, and typically it's a throwing error. You just oversell the guy running towards third. You air mail it and it goes in the dugout. But it's not typically like we just didn't catch the ball. And I go all the way back to the Tuesday night game in Durham against Duke, where it felt like in the top half of the game, first inning of the game, we score, we have some momentum, and the season is still very much in front of us. And then we just give it all back in the bottom of the inning, and then you end up losing that game. And it kind of has not felt like East Carolina has played good baseball since then. And it's really, really frustrating to watch walks and errors and mental lapses. It's, in my opinion, it's okay to not be better than someone in baseball. Like that happens. Sometimes you get beat. But it's not going to be ever going to be okay to just not execute to your best abilities when you're given an opportunity to be on a stage like you are at East Carolina.
Yeah, good thoughts there. And a comment from Sharpie that kind of echoes that. Injuries are a factor, but doesn't explain the mental errors and lack of improvement in every facet of the game. So, yeah, I agree. I mean, look, you had three guys who made those mental errors or physical errors that are new to the program. And I don't know if having, like, this is in their first year, Brad Pruitt not covering first, Braden Burris, who is new to the outfield, and, just overran the ball because he was sprinting in. And then Alex Peltier, he's more used to playing center than right, but still got to make that catch. But 3 first-year guys to the program. You also had Walker Barron. I knew as soon as I saw it that Cliff, as a former catcher, was not going to be happy, but, didn't stretch for the ball at home plate, which is probably the difference between an out and a safe call there. With the forced call at home, you have to act like a first baseman, which Cliff talked about today. But, those little things, man, those make the difference. And I don't know what is not causing ECU to improve in those areas this year. We're late in the season, guys. For me, if it's not improving, I don't expect it to improve this year. I mean, maybe it will automatically just click when it's time. But Cliff Godwin said it best today, Wags. You can't just show up at the conference tournament and be like, all right, now we're going to start taking this stuff seriously. It's got to start now. And it's got to start against UTSA, which we'll get to later. But if it doesn't start cleaning up with the little things, the walks, the mental errors, the physical errors right now, then it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, I think not only is there a lack of improvement with that kind of stuff, but I think it's getting worse and worse as the season goes on, which is the most concerning part. And, with a young team, I think typically the expectation for guys like that is they might start slow, kind of get their footing in at this level of baseball, and they'll get better with the more experience they get. But I think in a lot of areas of the game with a lot of players, we're kind of seeing the opposite, where some of them started high and now they've really cooled off, both at the plate and in the field. And some started slow, then they got a little better, and then they kind of fell back down to earth a little bit. So I think that's really concerning for me. And again, like we talk about every week, the team and the coaching staff is not looking ahead to next year yet, but I am, and we all are, and I think that's perfectly fair to do. But when you're looking at who's going to be the guys that you build around for next year, when you see some of those guys who did start so well, and then as the season gone on, you can tell they've trended in the wrong direction. That's where I have the issue. So you got to figure some stuff out. And I think this weekend is a great opportunity. UTSA is really good. UTSA is not going to be easy, but it is senior week. And you'll have senior day. You'll have your guys like Riley Johnson, Jake Hunter that you'll be sending off. And those are 2 guys that did a lot. So if there's ever a week to kind of find your game again and figure out what the hell you're supposed to do, it's now. And you do that, and then you go to South Florida the final week, and then you go into Clearwater, and we know what we have to do in Clearwater to make the tournament. You have to go all the way. So you start now, you get a little momentum, and I think that's all you can really ask for.
All right, we'll get into some of the comments here in a minute, but what did we learn this past week, if anything new? We'll start with Scott Lorbatcher. Scott, did you learn anything?
Yeah, I think if there was a positive, it's that Bradley Zayak is the real deal, and he is a piece going not only forward not only this year but also next year. I would expect him to take a huge leap and maybe even be a part of this rotation. Maybe your Saturday or Sunday guy, but he does look like he's the real deal, and hopefully we'll see more of him. And we talked about in the past few weeks, somebody needs to step up from this pitching staff if we have a chance in Clearwater. I think Zayak is the guy that is primed to do that.
I do want to add as well that Cliff Galvin did say today that Zayak will start this weekend. So he said he's earned it, he deserves it, and I think he did open the year in the starting rotation due to injuries, but good to see him back. He's been great. What about you, Wags?
Yeah, I was also going to say Zayak, and it's nice to see him kind of full circle, starting the second game of the year and the doubleheader on opening day. But yeah, so since Scott said I'll go elsewhere and not really sure where, but I guess I'll go back to a familiar. It's not really something that we learned, but I do think this team has a weapon out of the bullpen in Colby Wallace, and he picked up his 3rd save of the year following Norby. And that's one of those games, especially you get such a good gem out of Norby, and then things start to they get a couple guys on, they start to build a little more momentum at the plate in that 8th inning, And Colby Wallace comes in, gets out of the jam, and then he shuts it down in the ninth. And there was a reason I picked him to lead the team in saves preseason. And I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know he's right there at the top. I think there's a couple of guys with 3, if I'm not mistaken. But Colby is right there in the mix, and he's a guy that if you get into a conference tournament setting where you're probably having to play a lot more games than you're really equipped to win, then having a guy like him where he can play third base, he can produce at the plate, produce runs, and also come in and close a game for you at any time, it's a true weapon. And I'm hoping that we see more of it down the stretch. And we had the same conversation last year, but going into next year, I hope we see it even more as a true weapon from start to finish out of the bullpen.
One of the things I learned, or at least I feel like I can take away from the weekend, is I just feel like Austin Irby the last few weeks is starting to have really good at-bats from start to finish, even if he doesn't get a hit. And I trust him in a big spot. He had a game-time hit on Sunday. I know the Pirates didn't win the game, but I just thought he looked confident, prepared, ready to hit in that spot, and he delivered. They bring in a lefty reliever, down 1 run with 2 outs, and he just stays on it, drives the ball back in the middle. So I feel like Irby's been a guy that, look, it is a long year when you're a freshman, especially when you're playing every day. And I don't know. I have to look. Let's see if I can check real quick. Irby's one of the few guys that has just been in the starting lineup almost every game. Yep, 47 out of 48 games. So I just feel like he's kind of established himself as a guy. Has it always been pretty? No, but I feel like he's a guy that I trust now and moving forward. Not that I didn't before, but definitely even more so. Just kind of watching his body language, his approach through an up and down season at times as a freshman. So that's what I learned over the weekend. All right. Lane Smith is in the chat. He says ECU is done. The Phillies are done. Let's talk ECU football's upcoming 10-2 season. All right, guys, quick record prediction. What do the Pirates go this year? Wags?
Without looking at a schedule, I'm going to be conservative and say 7-5.
Scott?
Want to know every week.
We did ask Caden Hauser what their goals were for this season. He was just like, win every game, go undefeated, starting with NC State. I was like, all right, bro. That's what I'm talking about.
Please win that game at NC State. That would make me so happy. Actually, I talked to one of my good buddies who's a state alum, season ticket holder, and he said, "I really hope you guys beat us so we can just fire Doran." He was like, "I'm just ready for that to be over," which it does a lot of the sentiment out of the state crowd.
It does seem to be a win-win situation for State heading to that season opener. If they lose, Doran's probably gone. If they win, obviously they win the game. Right now, I would say 7-5. Need to see some improvements defensively. Also worried about center. 7-5 for the second straight year. I'm going to say that lands you in the Myrtle Beach Bowl.
That's exactly what I was thinking. With 7-5. ECU Marshall Myrtle Beach Bowl. Final score of 97-93.
Repeat of the 2001 GMAC Bowl or whatever that was. That's the maddest I've ever seen my dad. All right. That was a frustrating comeback. Anyways, back to baseball. So Lane also adds, can we really say injuries? We don't even know how good those two guys are. I mean, to a degree, yes, but also you've got to factor in Riley Johnson. I mean, like, that's the injury that we know has been a backbreaker. Also, Braxton Trammell. We're talking about a couple one-run losses here. Like, does ECU win at least one, if not both, if Trammell's in the lineup? Maybe. I think he was trending up when he got hurt. The Towers and Antolik thing, guys. Towers looked really good in the preseason. I thought he was. I never saw Antolik pitch, so I don't know. But he's got big arm, big upside. The problem is just the stress it puts on the rest of your staff not having them there and the roles that change. So I do say injuries is a factor. Is it the only reason? No, but I don't know. Scott, your take?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. The three guys that we expected to give you length aren't pitching well enough. So it's Antolik, it's Towers, It's Sean Jenkins, we thought would be a legitimate Friday or Saturday night guy, and he hasn't been that. So that's made Norby move to the rotation. It's not allowed you to use Ethan Young as effectively as you could, and Brad Pruitt as effectively as you could. And I think if you have those guys and they can give you 5-6 innings a night, then Jake Hunter could be your Tuesday night guy and give you 7, and all of it works way better. But we're back in the 2021, piece it together, and we don't have as good of pieces as we did that season, unfortunately. So I do think it matters, but I would also say if a guy hasn't pitched an inning, it's hard to factor in how much they would have mattered to a team. I do think those guys were good, but I don't know that we can rely on guys that are coming off injuries to be key contributors, because we've seen how difficult it is for guys to come off an injury and be successful. We talk about Riley Johnson a lot and how tough he is, but would we have been better serviced if we'd have known going into the season that he wouldn't be available to go out and get a center fielder with experience? And I would say yes, but you can't predict that he's going to get hurt and that he's not going to be available.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. And I think if Riley graduated last year, there's a good chance Bristol Carter's back. I mean, that's just what I've heard from some of the people that know Bristol. So I don't know. I mean, it's just you can always second guess these things, but injuries too are part of the game, Wags, and I think it is a factor, but I don't think it is the reason we're seeing ECU miss a regional. Like, if both those guys were healthy, I still think this would be at best bubble team. Maybe I'm wrong there, but your take.
Yeah, I completely agree. But Scott was also right when he said that, having Towers and Antolik, that's probably your Friday and Saturday guy to start the year. And then you have Sean Jenkins. So when you are down to 2 with injuries, probably thrust Sean Jenkins into a little bit more pressure than he was ready for. And it's just kind of a spiral throughout the rest of the staff from there as you try to figure out, where to go. But in the end, those 2 guys being injured is not the reason that experienced guys that were already supposed to play big roles on the staff this year are coming in and walking in runners with the bases loaded. And they come into a game and just throw 3 straight balls and look completely uncompetitive. That has nothing to do with other guys being injured. So to me, that's just an issue. This team isn't good enough. And I agree. I think even if you have those guys, I think it helps you a lot. And I think you're probably a heck of a lot closer to the bubble with those guys and with a healthy Riley Johnson. But even with them, it's just given what we've seen from the rest of the team and how inconsistent it has been. And I mean, I've said it every week. I don't think the coaching staff has put the team in a position to win a whole lot this year. So when you factor all that stuff together, I don't think that it really moves the needle all that much. But it is fair to acknowledge the injuries have played a role, but it's not the only factor. You can't make that excuse.
All right, Bobby Williams said, did we buy damaged goods or did we injure them in the fall? Towers, I was at the scrimmage. He got hurt. He was fine. He was pitching well. They limited his workload. I don't even know if he pitched over the summer. And he just felt something in his arm. And I don't even know what the deal is. Like, I heard that the MRI originally came back clean, and he just hasn't been able to make it back. So I don't know. Antolik sounds like he had a hip deal. I don't know when exactly that flared up, but the concern is you can't get it figured out. So, for me, guys, I'm going into next year, even if they're back, I'm not going to say you don't count on them at all, but, I don't know if you could pencil them into the rotation necessarily because, I don't know what I'd have to see the medical reports. It just gives me some uneasy feeling. As you said, Scott, counting on a guy coming off an injury. Yeah,
I mean, you can't do it. And shout out Towers. He's a Vegas guy, now, like me now. So,
big Vegas guys, Scott and Ryan Towers. Caden Hauser, too.
We have another guy coming in from Vegas
next
year as well. So, the ECU Vegas pipeline is pumping. But yeah, I mean, I think any time you take a guy who's injured, you run the risk of him not being available. So one thing that I would like for us to do moving forward is, it seems to me that when we get guys from the SEC that are, that didn't play, it's oftentimes they're like guys that were injured. But I would like to see us take a couple more flyers on guys that were, you know, went to the SEC out of high school that maybe couldn't find the field. I think about like a guy like Grant Nip who went to Campbell and was a monster for them. Like, imagine him on this team and the value that he would provide. He was a bullpen arm. He hit a ton of home runs, and then he got drafted. And I would assume he's probably going to be on the Mariners major league team anytime now. But that's the kind of guy that I would be more willing to take a risk on. And then, if we're talking about what the portal should do, is you look for those guys and guys that were highly successful in a specific skill set at a smaller conference. Guys that could start, guys that had really good appearances out of the bullpen, things like that for the pitching staff. And I would probably, just because we've been bitten by it so many times, avoid guys coming off injury going forward.
Fair for sure. All right. Casey O'Malley says we get players from the island of SCC Misfit Toys. Zach Daughtery says it's more than injuries. The season has been a huge red flag for the strategic approach to the game with the roster that is here. Can't go out knowing the issues with pitching and then choose not to be aggressive and opt to bunt. The end of Game 3 was a cataclysm for how bad this team is. Can't advance a risk to score and then simple fielding mistakes. Until questions are raised about the systematic failure of our pitching coach and hitting coach being unable to develop guys from top to bottom, nothing will change. So should we fire everybody? I mean,
yes.
I think internally there's going to be a major review ongoing in this offseason, guys. And we talked big picture, I think, last week, Wags. Scott, you were too busy partying in Vegas, but we talked a little bit before we let you go. But I would be just shocked if there's not major changes from a roster standpoint. Now, I think Cliff Godwin is always going to opt to bunt and do those sort of things. He's done it for 11 years. He's had big success with it. That's just the game they want to play. So I do think they will make an adjustment to how the roster is constructed, and time will tell how that looks, Wags. But that's kind of where I lean. I just don't see – I don't even know if Cliff has fired a coach during his tenure here. Does anybody come to mind for either of you guys? So,
No.
I don't expect that necessarily to happen. But I'd be surprised. I mean, would I be shocked? No, but I'd be pretty surprised if it did.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I mean, I think I'm one of the loudest critics of the coaching staff in this fan base.
Wags hates the coaches.
But it's not always the answer to just fire everyone. But you can't not answer. Someone has to answer for what happened. But there's a few ways you can take that. Well, there's one way you can take it where, oh yeah, clean house, completely start over, start from scratch next year. But then it's like you said, it's just you look at the roster, and this roster clearly isn't good enough. And to me, and I'm going to steal something I think Scott said in a text in our group chat a couple weeks ago, but this team needs to go back to recruiting the Bryson Worrells and those types of guys, those types of builds where you get some really toolsy guys from around the area. Yeah, we need some more dogs in this club. And, I mean, those types of guys, and I believe what Scott said word for word is that's what ECU baseball was built on. And, we don't have anywhere close to that right now. And, I think that's what you need. I think you need to look back to the conversation, we started a little bit earlier. I think it's, do you keep taking flyers on your hand-me-downs from some of these other conferences, or do you kind of revamp your approach on the recruiting trail, and do you get more aggressive on the JUCO trail and try to take some guys who, and we talked about this last year too, but I want guys who profile have all the tools and look like they will translate. Give me some big power guys, is what I'm saying. The guys who are built to hit home runs, those types of guys, I think those are the kinds that typically, if they're hitting home runs at that level, they're probably going to keep hitting home runs. And, you're going to have your misses. I mean, we've seen misses this year on JUCO, but I think that to me is where you're going to make the biggest difference. And I think the JUCO class they have coming in for next year is a very good start. I think you have 2 or 3 at the very least instant day one lineup contributors, if not everyday guys. So that's where I would go. But yeah, eventually someone has to answer in some way for what's gone wrong this season, because like we said, it's not all the injuries. It's the lack of execution, the inability to put down a bunt, the walking guys with bases loaded. It's all that kind of stuff. And if you're not going to make changes with the coaching staff, then you have to make changes elsewhere.
I do agree. I think this incoming class is going to be more of what we've been asking for, the junior college guys, and they're bringing in some big bats in this class. And it's just a matter of how quickly can those guys adapt. As far as the portal, I think they need to attack the portal a little bit more aggressively. But unless Garrett Blackwelder shifts his $500,000 check from basketball to baseball, I think you're going to have a hard time landing proven home run hitters or whatnot in the portal. We'll address this too. Wonder what we would do if the South Florida series need to be as fresh as possible for Clearwater. Wags, I know you listened to the interview today. I'm not sure if you got a chance, Scott, but Cliff did say essentially they will rest pitchers for the South Florida series. Now, he did say this is, how much remains to be seen, but he did say this weekend, you're at home, it's senior weekend, you got to go win the games. And they got to win games to make the tournament. So I think that's the approach they're going to take, and I think it's the right approach, Scott, at this point, because, I mean – obviously, you got to make sure you make the tournament, but once you get to the final weekend, it's all about the tournament at that point.
Well, yeah. First, I was going to say that if Blackwelder does want to shift his money, maybe Godwin will actually use it to land some impact players. But
let's not get started on that conversation here, please. There's already 500-word message board thread about it.
But yeah, I mean, so one, in theory, it would be great to rest our pitchers, right? Well, I don't think we have a comfortable enough lead on 9th place right now for that to be the case, and we have the best team in the conference coming in this weekend. So, in theory, it's a great idea, but you get too cute with it, and all of a sudden you finish in 9th, and you don't even get to go to Clearwater. That's a bit of a problem too, right? So, I think we do need to see what happens against UTSA before we can say too much. I will say if you go to South Florida where you only need to win one game, I think you do go out there and you put everything into winning that first game. And then once you've won it, your Ethan Youngs and Brad Pruitts and Bradley Zayax, I would pitch very sparingly. I do think you throw them. I don't think you go a full week without throwing a guy you need. Even if we went 3 games up where we're going to make the conference tournament no matter what, I don't think you go and, don't throw Norby or don't throw Ethan Young, because I think staying in that mindset does matter, and I do think they need to throw, but I would probably cap them at 75 pitches or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, in theory, it's a great idea, but I do think that we haven't solidified ourselves in the position to talk about resting guys, because we got a lot of work to do just to get there.
All right, the Celtics and Knicks, by the way, I was reacting to the screen. The Knicks just missed a layup near the buzzer, about to go to OT. It looks like all the Celtics have a chance to win it, 100-100 tie. For anybody that cares. All right, some comments here. Johnny Robertson says, I am still in on this team. I will be making the 550-mile round trip for the 7th time this season to be there for the UTSA series. Shout out Johnny Robertson. You are a true OG Pirate. And Mr. Stats. Speaking of, he says Colby with his 2nd game recording a save and hitting a home run. But this time he did it in the same inning. So some stats there from Johnny. All right, let's see if I've missed any other comments. Johnny Stats has another one. In the past 10 AAC tournaments, the number 1 seed has only won it once, ECU in 2022. He says the number 7, the number 6, and the number 3 seeds have all won it in the past 4 years. No team has won it without winning the first 2 games. The loser's bracket of death. Yeah, if you fall into the loser's bracket, you're done. And we'll get more into that conversation the week of. But I think ECU is the only team to make it to the championship game out of the loser's bracket. But I don't know. It's just this team has a lot of work to do. Case and Romeli says they won't lose on graduation weekend. We'll see about that. UTSA is pretty damn good. Any other thoughts on like the players or play that's standing out to you guys right now before we move into maybe a little bit? We'll look at the American picture here in a second, but just want to give everybody a shot. If any other things stand out from an individual perspective this weekend, Wags, on the stat sheet or as you're watching the games.
Yeah, I think Alex Boucher had a good, at least, end of the weekend, and I think he's gotten better defensively.
Multiple hits in every game.
Yeah, and he's come through with a homer or two in the last couple of weeks, and he's cut down on the errors. So that's been a positive sign. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, it's pitching. It's kind of who's the next guy, and I think that's still the big storyline. It's the same thing every week for me, and it's who's going to be that next guy to step up. And I still think we're not going to get through the rest of the season without needing another one of those guys to step up. Whether it's your Gabe Beschloss, it's your Ian White, it's your one of those levels of guys where they've had some mixed results this season, but they've shown flashes. I still think you're going to need one of them, especially when we get into a situation where if we do have the luxury to rest guys against South Florida, if it's one of those things, just say you have your 3 – let's say your 3 guys are Ethan Norby, Ethan Young, and Jake Hunter and Brad Pruitt. Let's say you throw each of those 4 guys over the weekend 2 innings, 3 at max. That's still a lot of innings you're going to have to make up. Even if you have your Jackson DiLorenzo come in, you have Bradley Zayac come in after that. You have so many other guys and Colby Wallace to kind of fill the gaps. That's still a lot of innings that are not accounted for. So it's a big test, and I'm hoping that we get to use that test this weekend against a good team, because there's no better way to test a pitcher out than against a good team. So it's one of those things. Who cares if they don't work out? Who cares? You have to keep trying. And I do want to touch on Brad Pruitt while I am on the pitching stuff here, but we learned that he's a reliever, and that's okay. He had a good start in the rotation when he moved there, but he's just shown he's more effective out of the bullpen, and don't know why. Couldn't tell you. Don't know if it's a mental thing or just a simple execution thing, but I'm not giving up on Brad Pruitt. I still think that he's a guy that if this team does go on a run in Clearwater, he's going to have to be a big reason why. And I'm hoping that he can bounce back out of the bullpen. I don't think we're going to see him start again. But yeah, he's a guy that I still want to turn it around, and he's part of my plans for next year, assuming he decides to come back because he is draft eligible. But that's a guy I'm not giving up on. I just wanted to say that. I know he's had a rough go of things here as of late, but I'm not out on Brad Pruitt.
Wags is not out on Brad Pruitt, and I'm not either. I think Pruitt, Jenkins you're gonna have those guys to make a run in Clearwater. Anything stand out to you, Scott, that you want to hit before we move into the conference standings?
Yeah, I think a little bit of, maybe, I don't know if it's really time off, but Ethan Norby, what he did on Saturday, and this is the second time this year where he's had just a phenomenal performance, and it's been overshadowed by kind of a lackluster weekend around it. Thinking back to the Coastal Series, where I really wish we were here celebrating how good Ethan Norby has been this year for a guy that really should not have been forced into a Friday night role. And he's been phenomenal. I mean, he's been great. He had a stretch where it wasn't as good as it had been, but there's not a lot of guys that strike out 19 guys in a weekend and then have to watch their team kind of underperform in the other 2 games and then come back later in the year in a weekend where you need to have it, go 7 and go the longest he's ever pitched in a game, and then that be the only game that we win this weekend. And like Wag said earlier, Colby Wallace, I really wish we were able to celebrate his performance this weekend a little bit more, because we were celebrating a 3-1 week. Because I do think Colby Wallace is a guy that is going to be vastly important for this team in 2026.
Good thoughts there for sure. All right. Got a lot of comments on the portal, which we've kind of already addressed, but people saying, like Zach saying, money may be the reason we don't get the top of the transfer portal, but other mid-majors with less money are able to find more talent in the portal. Definitely agree. It can be. If you make it a priority, you can find guys out there. It's got to be one for the entire staff. And Chuck says, I heard through NIL and Club 23 will be able to fund 23 scholarships next year. NCAA will allow 34 full scholarships. That should be the athletic department funding, the 23 or mid-20s, not the NIL and Club 23. Now, they may be able to help out with that, but that's a cost that the athletic department is expected to take on, and then also match that via women's sports as well, according to John Gilbert. So just want to clarify that. And Sharpie adds, there's no reason ECU can't be the best non-Power 4 team like always. Obviously, the gap between us and the SEC/ACC will widen because of money, but if our peers can adapt, then so can ECU. All right, I just want to say
There's no Power 4 in baseball.
Yeah.
Don't include the Big Ten in any baseball conversation.
I agree. The Big Ten baseball is not. It's not it. I'm with you there. I hate that it's bled into baseball. All right. The American guys, the standings are crazy. Yeah, props to UTSA. I mean, they've been incredible. They are in a spot ECU is usually in. They are 18-3 in the conference, 37-10 overall, barring a complete collapse. They're an at-large team, top 25 RPI. Shouldn't host due to their crappy facilities and average non-conference schedule, but they've had an incredible year. Good for them. We'll see them up close and personal this weekend. And then you have a giant logjam. FAU, Charlotte, and South Florida are tied for second at 12-9. Tulane and ECU are tied for fifth at 11-10. Now, the problem for ECU is they have lost series to FAU, Charlotte, and Tulane. 3 teams ahead of them. They have yet to play South Florida, so that series could loom large in terms of seeding. But the Pirates could be via some tiebreakers. But you've got one game, guys, separating second from 6th place. Then you have Rice at 8-13. UAB, Memphis, and Wichita State all tied at 7-14 for the final spot. 8 of the 10 teams make the conference tournament. So ECU would really have to fall apart, which is possible with UTSA and South Florida on the schedule. This weekend, you've got UAB at Charlotte, UTSA at ECU, USF at FAU, 2 teams tied in the standings at 12-9. Tulane's at Memphis, and Wichita State is at Rice. Anything stand out to you about this race and the schedule this weekend, Wags?
Yeah, I think overall, looking at the teams behind ECU, a lot of them play each other over the last 2 weeks. And, this week we have Rice against Wichita State, and Memphis finishes at Wichita State. So that means Wichita State is at Rice and then versus Memphis. So logic tells you overall through that, they're all going to kind of break even. So it makes me feel like ECU is just safe. They're going to make the conference tournament. So I'm not really worried about that. But at the same time, you look at a team like Wichita and, Rice isn't very good. Rice is 1 game ahead of them at 8-13. But a team like Wichita is 7-14. If they win both of the series at Rice and then Memphis and, another team gets hot, then you never know. So it's a fun race for sure. But yeah, props to UTSA because they've taken care – they are the ECU of this year. And I think, yeah, the facilities suck, and the resume is a little light as you would expect. But that's a team, RPI-wise, they're going to need a lot of help, but I wouldn't completely rule them out of, the hosting mix. And they're not there for me in my field, but they're one of the teams that when I'm going through and making my bracket, it's at least I give them at least a thought. It's maybe they could. They might. They probably need 3, 4, 5 teams to stumble over the last 2 weeks in conference tournaments to get there. But UTSA is just completely dominated this season. So they've earned where they're at. And I am excited to see them this weekend. And as much as I'm not excited because of what I think is going to happen for ECU on the baseball field, I do think it's a chance to kind of see how good really is UTSA, because I haven't watched a lot of them this year. So, but yeah, it is a shame, their facilities and how awful and embarrassing they are. And if postseason baseball does have to go there, then everyone involved should be fired.
anything intrigue you in this race, Scott, for the conference?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, ECU is 5-10 against teams not named Memphis and Rice in the AAC.
Yeah.
And so I do think it is a problem. I don't think it's a surefire thing that we are a top 8. But as far as UTSA goes, they're getting the year in this conference that ECU has needed the last 3 or 4 years. I think if looking at the RPIs, right? So take UTSA out of it. You have FAU at 56, Charlotte at 83, ECU at 84, South Florida at 106. That would have been fantastic last year when everybody was dogging us for being in a bad league, and maybe we don't deserve a top 16 because our league's not good. So UTSA, for them, they're coming here. You get a top 85 team on the road. You sweep them, your RPI could be 15, 16 maybe. Then you're right in that hosting mix, and I don't remember if there's a AAA team in San Antonio that maybe they can borrow their stadium for a weekend to host the first round, and because I just don't see the selection committee giving it to a
San
school.
Antonio Missions.
Well, there you go. Maybe they can play there. Remember the Alamo.
Just playing in the Alamo Dome.
But I do like seeing teams like UTSA rise up and have successful seasons. And I would say that I hope that our fan support and support from our other athletic programs will be as good as UTSA's was last year when we played down there.
All right, Johnny Robertson says USF has to play at Florida on Tuesday, at North Florida on Wednesday, in Jacksonville, and then travel to FAU on Friday. So that's a lot of baseball to play. And Brady Thomas wants to know, when is the last time you used that printer, Jonathan Wagner?
A couple months ago, it was for March Madness brackets. But, there's a comment that there's a comment that you skipped earlier, and I really don't know why. And it's from Johnny Gardner. And he said, Igo, if you ever bring back your merch platform, you need to add a Wags human bobblehead to your product line. And I just want to know why you kind of read over that and didn't acknowledge it. Am I not good enough for you, Igo?
I don't know how I feel. How would a Wags bobblehead sell? Do we think that would sell well?
You get at least one.
Yeah.
I
think all three of us
someone
would buy
who
one.
tried to start a merch shop. ECU fans like the concept of merch more than they like the actual application of purchasing it based off of what I have found.
I think your merch shop was great. The Fake Bunt Club. I still need to buy one, but I'm guessing has the shop been discontinued?
I have not clicked on that Etsy page in months, so I have no idea.
I think it just, after a while, goes defunct if you don't update it, which is what happened to mine. I need to go back and update it maybe this summer. I always say that, and then I never do.
We'll collab with my ideas and your brand.
Yeah, we'll get together for sure. All right. Bold predictions, guys. Did we hit any last week?
I think no, because I had Ethan Norby to appear in every game, and then he started and pitched 7 2/3 innings in one game.
I had Sean Jenkins would start a game over the weekend and not allow a run. So I had a solid run thanks to some calls and some bounces, but yeah, he did it. I'm giving a run, so I did not get it correct this week.
I think I had Walker Barron hitting a home run, which did not come true. Not a lot of home runs hit in Wichita. It seems like a pretty big park. It plays big, so we'll try to be better. this weekend. All right, guys, week ahead, UTSA, the top team in town, coming into town in the league. They have lost 3 conference games all season. We'll see what happens in this one. And I don't know. I've got a weird feeling about this weekend, but I'll let you guys go first with your predictions as far as the games before we make our bowl predictions. We'll start with Scott.
I'm gonna go 1-2. I said it before. We're 5-10 in games not against Memphis and Rice, so that would fall right in line with that. And this is one thing I thought about earlier today, and I do feel like we have really lost our home field advantage, and I think a lot of that is a casualty of success. When I was in school and up until recently, it was pretty easy to sit in the stands. And I think as cool as the jungle is, when ECU is good, it's when the fans in the stands are kind of leaning on you and you feel the pressure from how many people are there in the seats and how loud it can be. And it kind of echoes from the jungle to the stands. And we've lost our way on that. And I think we need to do something to get that back as a program. And I don't have the solutions, and I'll be the first to admit that. But it may be that we need less season tickets and more butts in the seats. So until we can get a real home field advantage back to where it feels like when we play at home, we're the favorites no matter what, I have a hard time predicting us to defeat a team that I think is better than us at home. So I'll say 1-2 this week.
Fair thoughts for sure. McLean Anderson says, yes, so tough to get a ticket in the seats if you're not a season ticket holder. Great take, Scott. Yeah, maybe we could do a whole show on that. I feel like we've done a lot of takes on that, and it's worth mentioning again and again because it's frustrating to go to these games and see the amount of people not in the seats. Wags, your take on the weekend ahead.
Yeah, I could see a lot of different things happening. I could see us going 0-3. I could see us going 1-2. I could see us going 2-1. There's no shot that we go 3-0. I'm gonna stop there. But yeah, I think it's senior weekend. Senior day especially for Riley and for Jake for what they've done and been through. I think that means something, and it means something to this team. It means something to the staff, and hopefully the fans show up this weekend and can give them the exit that they deserve from the weekend at least. But I think I'm going to settle in at 1-2, and that's mostly because I don't see ECU losing and Ethan Norby start right now with the way he's going. So I'm assuming he's going to be back till Friday night. So I think you're going to win and start things off on the right foot. But it's just after that, it's UTSA is better, and I think it's going to be a competitive series. I don't see blowouts really, even though logic would probably tell you that's going to happen. But just my gut tells me it's going to be a tight series, but I just don't think ECU has enough. But I do think they win one game and go 1-2.
Yeah, I was going to get crazy and predict the sweep, but I just can't do it. I mean, UTSA is really damn good, guys. I do think ECU wins the series. I just have a feeling they play well this weekend at home. And I wonder, too, what is UTSA's motivation? They're going across the country. They're 22-2 at home. They're 15-8 on the road. That's a pretty big discrepancy there. I know they've played pretty well in some tough road environments this year. And like Scott said, it's not the same road environment we're used to. But I just have a feeling ECU wins. The biggest thing is, guys, assuming Norby starts Friday, they just got to get some length on Friday, man. That is killing them. You can't have your starter go 1 or 2 innings, which has happened 3 straight weekends. If the Friday starter just has a solid start, I think they win the series. But they got to do that. And, imagine if you could just bring Ethan Young in at the 7th instead of the 2nd inning when it's 5-0 for the opposing team. Pirates get it done. That could also count as my bold prediction, but whatever. Bold predictions, guys. We got some in the chat. We'll get to here in a second, but anybody want to step up and go first?
I got you.
Let's hear it.
So one, UTSA's motivation is just bringing home wins for Sean Bailey. They got to do it for their performance coach.
I don't even think he works there anymore.
Well, either way, do it for him. The biggest human that I think I've ever seen in real life.
He is giant.
He is enormous. But bowl prediction is 1988 shades of Kirk Gibson, Riley Johnson home run this weekend on two bad shoulders.
You stole my bold prediction, man. Good pick, though. Good pick. Wags?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I do think it's going to be a tight series, which means I think there's going to be a lot of in-game tinkering and pinch running and pinch hitting and defensive replacements, and it's going to drive me crazy. I'm going to complain through every second of it, but I think it's going to give guys like Alex Peltier and Drew Downs opportunities to not only play in the field and hopefully catch their fly balls, but I think they're going to get at-bats late in the game, and I think Drew Downs and Alex Peltier will combine for 3 hits this weekend. 3 games, and no guarantee they get a single start. So that's where I'm going.
I thought you were going to say 3 home runs for a second.
Hit a game for Downs and Peltier. Wags bold prediction.
I don't know where I'm going to go now with y'all taking my pick. Let's say that. Man, this is tough. All right, I'm gonna go with Austin Irby with a 2-homer weekend. I think he's finding a stroke. I'm gonna say the wind will be blowing out to right field, and I think I called this earlier this weekend and he didn't, or the season he didn't hit it. But I'm gonna go back to it. Austin Irby 2-homer weekend prior to win the series. All right. JPN says going 0-3. Norby pitches a gem. We lose 2-1. Norby game. Bold prediction: ECU gets run rule twice from Lane Smith. Sharpie says bold prediction: we will bunt into strikeouts 3 times over the weekend. McLean says their motivation is seeding. Could UTSA not host? I mean, I guess they could still, but do we really believe the committee is going to let UTSA host? I mean, they would have to have like a top 10 RPI. Who's the team they screwed out one year? I can't remember.
Indiana State. No, they got to host, right?
They got to host one year, but I feel like they had to be up there like 3 years in a row to finally get some recognition.
I think they got to Kentucky once too.
Yeah. But to me, the issue with hosting for UTSA is just there's a lot of teams above them in the pecking order, and a lot of it's because of the SEC and RPI is inflated. But I do think a lot of those teams are really good. Like for me this week, I had Alabama, Oklahoma, both out of the hosting mix, but those are 2 teams that all it takes is one good week for them to leapfrog just about anybody in front of them in the pecking order. So, but they're one of those things. If UTSA does take care of business, and like we said earlier, if they finish with the top, say, 15 RPI, and some of the teams in front of them lose, then the resume is going to be a little light still, but they're absolutely going to be, at the very least, one of the first teams there in the mix.
Yeah,
it is. Oh, good.
Coastal, Irvine, DBU currently ahead of them in RPI, and it would be different if there were no non-power conference teams ahead of them. Because I do think the committee tries to get at least one non-power conference team a hosting spot, but they have other teams that would kind of fill that role already. But I mean, UTSA does have a win over Texas midweek. I think that's probably like really the only feather in their cap right now. But yeah, I mean, they already have Coastal. You have Oregon State, the independent team that I guess isn't in a power conference either. So
yeah, and the thing that hurts UTSA too, 125 non-conference strength of schedule as a non-power team, like that's going to ding you. I mean, you got to be at least top 100, unless you're just completely dominant. All right, guys, we are out of time. We are out of time on this Monday. Surprisingly, went an hour pretty easily. And look, it's been a long year. Appreciate everybody. We've still had great participation with the chat, great viewership. Appreciate everybody tuning in. It's always a ton of fun, and we'll be back next week. Anybody got any closing thoughts?
Yeah, next week will be game 1, 2, 3, game 4 for Canes and Caps in Raleigh. So, yeah, I don't think I'll be at that game, but I will be very distracted next week. Hell yeah. I will be very distracted. So if you want to see Wags on edge, tune in next week.
The Caps will win that game because it will be a gentleman's sweep.
So if the Capitals, excuse me, how about this? If the Pirates sweep UTSA, you are not allowed to watch the game.
Watch which game?
The Hurricanes game. You got to do this whole podcast blind.
Yeah, I can't make that deal with you. No shot.
Hey, you did say that there's no shot that the Pirates sweep, so yeah.
True, that is a good point.
And keep in mind,
you know what? Okay,
3-0 in the series. So it's a low stress game anyway.
Caps in 6.
Yeah, Wags is on the Caps train against the Canes. But if ECU sweeps, Wags cannot watch the Hurricanes game.
I'll make that deal because it's not going to happen. I'll make that deal.
There you go. All right, we're saving the tape. This is on the record. All right, let's get out of here. Brandon Carr says wear more blue. So he wants Wags to wear more Carolina blue. Disgusting. Although he's a big Bill Belichick guy these days. And whatever that girl's name is, Jordan.
Read through the VIP chat if you have not already.
Fun stuff. We got to get out of here. It's been fun, guys. Appreciate it as always. We'll see you next Monday night, 9 o'clock. Go Nuggets.